I'm gonna get your daddy, okay? Okay. Well, hello. Happy Sunday afternoon. If you are joining me live, thank you for joining me. I am Jessica. This is the Pet Parenting Reset. And today on our live, we're live on YouTube and on Facebook. If you're watching a replay, you could be watching this anywhere, including Rumble. So I do upload these videos to Rumble when we're done, if you do prefer to watch over there. Thank you for joining me. The Pet Parenting Reset, we talk about canine nutrition, canine enrichment, positive reinforcement training, feline enrichment, feline nutrition, all the things for our pets. So thank you so much for joining me live this Sunday. We are going to be talking about how to talk to your vet if they are AntiRaw, right? So let's see over here. At any time during the video, if you're watching live, you can go ahead and comment and we can have a conversation back and forth. That's wonderful. I very much appreciate when you do that. It makes this go much easier for me when you do that. If you're watching a replay, you can still comment and then I can reply to you. So either way, make sure you do post in the comments. JR is here. He said, great video quality. Thank you. It is an external webcam. Oh, I think my phone, my watch was listening to me that whole time. All right, guys. So let's get into today's topic. And I do want to say I have an extra special bonus for our Patreon subscribers, our Patreon family. So if you have any questions today, go ahead and post them in the chat. And if it is part of that bonus, I will direct you over to Patreon. But here's the thing. I have seen so many people post on social media that their vet is completely against raw feeding. And here's the thing. I kind of understand. And I also understand like how people want to follow their vet's instructions. Like I was that person not that long ago. As little as 12 years ago, I was definitely that person that was like, my vet said do this. This is what I'm doing, period, end of story. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So first and foremost, what's the bonus? The bonus, you're going to have to go over to Patreon and find out. But I will give you a hint as to what it is when we get to the end of this video. So make sure you stick around. Okay, so let's first talk about, I'm going to give you my opinion of what to say to your veterinarian if they are anti-raw feeding. But before we get there, let's talk about some of the reasons that your vet may be against raw feeding. And we're going to discuss these a little bit in detail because this information is going to be key to having a conversation with your veterinarian if they're open to having a conversation. And we're going to talk about that in a little while too. So again, go ahead and post your comments in the chat or the comment section, depending on where you're watching. If you have a question specifically about what I'm talking about, great. Let's have a conversation. If you have a question that may be like parallel related, go ahead and post it anyway. And if I can get to it, I absolutely will. So the very first reason that, and there generally are just a couple, that pretty much all veterinarians are gonna have these same reasons for being anti-raw. So the training that they receive, this is the first one, the training that they receive in school tells them, which is one class and one semester. That's all the nutrition training they get. And that nutrition training covers a wide variety of animals, not just your dog and your cat. So if you can imagine, they're not getting a whole lot of nutrition training. So first and foremost, as Dr. Judy Morgan has said, I've been reading some of her blogs on this as well, they are scared because they're not equipped to help you create a nutritionally balanced diet for your pet. They don't have that knowledge or expertise. So if they can't help you, how are they going to monitor, keep us. So that's part of it. But also, their training tells them that kibble is the best and only way to feed an animal. So, universities with accredited veterinary medicine programs will have some support for that program from outside funding, which will be generally one of two main pet food companies. There are a couple more, but it's primarily going to be Hills and Royal Canin. Purina plays a part in there a little bit, but those are the two main ones. Hills or Royal Canin. And generally, if you think about every veterinary office you've ever been in, they're either selling Hills or Royal Canin. And I'd like to tell people, if you look at their degree on the wall and then you go research that veterinary school and find out where their primary funding comes from for the veterinary program, it's going to probably be whatever pet food manufacturer that they have in their office, because that's what they're most familiar with. So while vet students get very limited training in nutrition, what they do get is sponsored by one of these companies. For example, UC Davis has a pet food program which allows all of their veterinary students, and specifically at UC Davis, I don't know about other universities, but specifically at UC Davis, this actually is going to apply to all of their staff and students. They allow their veterinary students to purchase discounted food from Hills, Purina, or Royal Canin, among other support that they provide to the university. So additionally, once the student has graduated and begins practicing, these same pet food manufacturers, as well as pharmaceutical companies, have kickback programs in place for these veterinarians to sell and prescribe their products, according to Dr. Lori Kosher on her blog, The Healthy Dog Workshop. So we are very, very fortunate to have some really incredible veterinarians who are providing their skills and their knowledge and their expertise above and beyond. They are taking, a lot of these veterinarians that provide us with all of this wonderful information don't actually practice anymore. When you're practicing, you just don't have time in general. I'm not saying this is 100% across the board, but in general, as a veterinarian, when you're in practice, you have almost no time for even self-care, much less learning anything more. So anything more than you have to, right? So if they're getting what they need or what they think they need from these pet food companies who come in all the time, they have representatives who come in and say, we have this new diet and this is why it's so wonderful and you need to tell your patients all about it. That's what they're going to do, right? So that's the first reason. The second reason is, and this one is a big one, guys, so hang in there with me. There's a risk of bacteria such as Salmonella or E. coli. Yeah, absolutely. There sure is. But there's a risk of Salmonella or E. coli and Listeria and so many other things in kibble, as well as the raw meat that you provide, that you, I can't talk, that you buy and prepare for your family. In fact, you can find a list of recalls for pet foods on the FDA website. And I also found a really, really informative, very in-depth article from, excuse me, let me get a sip of water. By the way, everything I'm talking about, I've linked on my Patreon blog. So definitely make sure that we're going to talk about that a little bit more later, but definitely join the Patreon family because you get so much more information. There's a really great article from Nikki, the Canine Healthnut, who I've been following for a while now, and her blog is amazing. And it really, it is very detailed on the actual risk of Salmonella in pet food. Salmonella and Listeria is what her blog specifically talks about. It's very extensive, but well worth the time to read. Basically, it boils down to the fact that Salmonella and Listeria exist in all sorts of foods, even fruits and vegetables. Regardless of what you feed your dog, kibble or raw or anything in between, practice safe and sanitary food preparation practices in your kitchen. And here it is, guys. Wash your hands. Yes, wash your hands. The risk of salmonella actually harming your dog or cat is next to nothing. Their digestive tracts are shorter than ours and are also more acidic. They're designed to be able to eat live prey and not get sick. We, on the other hand, are the ones at risk for salmonella poisoning. So wash your hands and stop worrying about it so much. Yeah, that's the answer to that. The third reason that your veterinarian may be anti-raw is that there is a risk of nutrient deficiency, meaning it's not a complete and balanced food. Now, here again, we were just talking about the fact that veterinarians get very little nutrition training, and what they do get is completely sponsored by big pet food manufacturers, kibble manufacturers. So here's the thing. There are some people out there who say, I'm going to feed my dog a raw diet. They go to the grocery store, they buy a package of ground beef, and they feed that to their dog and say they're feeding a raw diet. Now, this is very, very few and far between, but understand when you walk in your veterinarian's office, that's what they're picturing in their head. Like, hands down, point blank, doesn't matter that when you say I'm interested in feeding my dog a raw diet, that's what they think you're doing. So being able to have a conversation, we're going to talk about this a little bit more later on, but having a conversation, being able to have a conversation with your veterinarian about this is so incredibly important. And here's the thing, even if you have done this, maybe you have gone to the store and bought a package of ground beef and fed that to your dog and called it a day. Well, if you are that kind of person that is interested in improving the health of your dog, my gut instinct is that you're also the kind of person that is going to start where you're going to start, wherever that may be. For me, it was a home cooked meal that, by the way, was not balanced in any way. And because I was just winging it. And you're going to start where you're going to start, and you're going to keep learning, and you're going to do better. Like, that's how this works right now. Maybe in the future, that's not going to be how this works. Maybe in the future, people are going to, off the bat, have, plenty of access, tons of information to more commercially available, amazing raw food brands and balanced diet recipes that they can fix themselves in their home. And if you're in the niche, you're going to have plenty of, right now, there's access to this information, but there needs to be more, of course. So maybe one day in the future, that's where it's going to be. But right now, we all start where we start, and it's generally not great, certainly not perfect, and we do better from there. Now, the one caveat that I do have with this whole thing about not starting perfectly is with puppies. Up to, I'd say, the first year, the 1 year mark for a puppy, we do need to be very, very careful about what we're feeding them. And there is plenty of great information out there. Personally, for ease and convenience, I would feed a commercially available raw food that I know is completely balanced for a puppy, because during these growth periods, we need to make sure that they are constantly receiving all of the nutrients they need, plenty of calcium for their growing bones, right? That's the one caveat I have. But in general, start where you start and do better. It's gonna be better than feeding kibble, in my mind. That's my opinion. So why JR says, why are so many vets against raw feeding? So these are the three top reasons, and we're on the third one right now, the nutrient deficiency risk. So here's the thing. When I talk about a raw food diet on social media, I do make a point of always saying that it needs to be balanced. And the reason I do that is because I don't want somebody coming back to me in 10 years and saying, oh, you never said anything about it needing to be balanced, and there are all kinds of issues or whatever. That's not something I want to happen. So I always want to have in your mind that it does need to be balanced, but there are plenty of raw feeders that do a DIY raw food diet, and they balance over time, generally a week. So one that I really want to shout out to, because I've learned so much from her blog, is Kimberly over at Keep the Tail Wagging. And she's a big advocate of balancing over time. And I believe she balances over the course of a week for her dogs. And the thing is that our meals are not balanced. Not like when we sit down to eat a meal, we don't balance it perfectly for what we need. Even in the course of a week, in the course of a day, the course of a week, we may not get all the nutrients we need. I personally take lots of vitamins for that reason. And if you watched last week or read the post on Patreon last week, if you're part of the Patreon family, you know that I have been giving Kim a vitamin as well. And on top of a balanced raw food diet that I buy commercially for her, which is a really, really great diet. And I've seen improvements and changes in her physical health just from adding that vitamin. So yeah, that's one thing I want to say. So even if it's not 100% right, like, you will be able to do better for your dog than that bowl of kibble can do. I recently was listening to a webinar that the Adored Beast put out. It was called Candid Conversations on Nutrition. Julianne Lee had an amazing roundtable discussion with Billy Huckman, Dr. Judy Morgan, and Dr. Nick Thompson. I have not seen a replay link. If I get a replay link, I will definitely update the Patreon post with it, because it is a must see. I actually didn't even get to see 100% of it because I was driving and listening to it while I was driving. So I'm really, really hoping that she at least puts it up on her YouTube channel. But the general consensus of the group was that some fresh food is better than none. So getting some fresh food into that bowl is absolutely better than 100% hands down than solely feeding a kibble diet. And there were so many wonderful, like, golden nuggets. I really am hoping for a replay. But here's the thing. There are so many veterinarians and so many people today feeding a raw food diet that the fact is that there isn't a whole lot of research on this type of diet. And that's another thing that your veterinarian may bring up, is that there's just no research to support feeding a fresh food or a raw food diet to your dog. And that is better than kibble. And while that's true in the scientific community, and to me, that boils down to funding. It costs a lot of money to conduct a scientific study. And who's going to do that? Certainly not the pet food companies that are making billions of dollars a year selling you kibble. They are never, ever in a million years going to fund a study on the effects of fresh food on your dog, because they're not supplying fresh food to you. To me, that's 100% what it boils down to. You can take that or leave that as you wish, but you're just not going to change my mind on that. And here's the fact. Dogs and cats never ate kibble until the 1960s, when it was invented. So you can't tell me that they'll die if they don't have it. What did these species do before kibble was invented? They've been around forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. I don't even know when the first dog and cat existed on Earth, but they certainly were not just dying off because they didn't get a kibble diet, because kibble was invented because of the metal rations during World War II. And then these pet food companies couldn't put pet food in metal cans any longer, which was the canned wet food. They had to create a dry food diet that they could package in paper and plastic. That's when it was invented. You can't tell me that dogs and cats need kibble to survive. There's just hands down 100%, absolutely not. That's not how this works. So in case you can't tell, I'm a little bit passionate about this. So here's the thing. What do you do when your vet is anti-raw? When you go into your vet's office and you either say you're feeding a raw diet or you tell them that you're considering feeding a raw diet, maybe your dog or cat is having tons of medical issues, scratching constantly, yeast infections, XYZ, obesity, right? Kidney disease, diabetes. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on and on and on. You're having issues or you're not having issues, and you say to your vet, I'm interested in feeding a raw food diet, and they just look at you and say, absolutely not, you're crazy. No, you're going to kill your dog or cat or whatever it may be. Now, here's my caveat, okay? It's very, very important for me to let you know that I am in no way proposing that you yell at or bash your vet or any other veterinarian. They have a really, really tough job. They work long hours. They get yelled at constantly and have people upset with them all the time. We don't need to add to this. In fact, it's really important that we let our veterinarians know how much we appreciate them, even if you don't see eye to eye on everything. The idea is when you should be able to have an intelligent conversation back and forth with your veterinarian. So don't go in unprepared. But if your vet does ask you something or say something that you're not prepared to answer, my go-to is, thank you for that information. I'm still in the research stage. I'll get back with you on this. So here is the response that, for me, I would say to a veterinarian who is just, no, absolutely not. You should not feed that to your dog. My question to them would be, can you tell me why you are recommending that I feed my pet a highly processed, carbohydrate-rich feed over fresh foods? That would be my question to pose to them. And more likely than not, you're going to get one of the three answers that we just discussed. And hopefully, with all of the information that I've provided to you, you're going to have plenty of information to then reply back to your veterinarian about whatever they say to you. And here is the other thing. If your veterinarian, because sometimes this will happen, just simply will not budge and says, if you feed your, and I've heard of this happening, where if you feed your dog a raw food diet, they will not let your dog come in the building. They are that afraid of your dog. For whatever reason, they are that afraid of your dog. It's always okay to look at your veterinarian and say, thank you for the information that you've provided to me. I will take it under consideration, and find another veterinarian. Now, that's easier said than done. I get it. I'm currently in the I'm still trying to find, I started my search for a veterinarian 3 months before we moved. We've been here for 3 months and I still have not found our veterinarian. I've seen veterinarians. I've had my animals see veterinarians since we've been here. I still have not I have not found our veterinarian. I get it. It's hard. It can be very difficult. So, I don't want to draw this out too much more. I actually put a lot more information into the Patreon post. So if you're not part of the Patreon family, I definitely recommend you go check it out. It's the first link in the description. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching anywhere else, check my link tree, which is Linktree /Jessica Fisher. Let me think. linktr.ee/Jessica Fisher, I believe is what Linktree is. Yeah, so there's so much, like, we need to be able to have conversations with our veterinarians. And here's the thing, our veterinarians are part of the team that cares for my pet. And the reason and I'm the captain, right? I am my pet's number one advocate. So I'm the captain of their team, right? And my veterinarian plays a role in that team. And I very much appreciate all of their dedication and hard work and knowledge, because they have knowledge I don't have, but they are part of the team. And here's the thing. So for so long, we have been treating our veterinarians as though they are solely responsible for the care of our pets, and they are overwhelmed with that. So we really need to help them out and shift. Like that needs to shift. That's the ultimate here, right? They are tasked with being the ultimate caregiver for our pets, and they simply don't, they haven't been equipped through veterinary school to be that. They don't live in your home with your pet. They don't have the nutrition information to help you, to provide additional information for you and your pet. And what's interesting is that in human medicine, your doctor will refer you to a nutritionist. If you're in the hospital and you have some procedure done and they recommend that you change your diet in any way, they're going to send a nutritionist in to talk to you. Your primary doctor or surgeon is not going to be the one to talk to you about that. It's a specialty inside of the medical field for humans. It actually is a specialty inside of the medical field for our animals as well. But that just isn't how things are playing out. So we have to take on that responsibility. For me, I'm okay with that. So it's really important to me to find a veterinarian that understands that I'm the captain, and I'm playing a huge role, and they're on my team. And it's important that we interact as team players, right? I'm not going to bash my veterinarian because she doesn't understand something that I understand. And that same thing should be happening in reverse, right? Our veterinarian should not be talking down to us because we understand something that maybe they don't. So that's the ultimate goal here. And I hope that I provided you with plenty of information to be able to handle an interaction and have a good conversation with your veterinarian, because that's what we should be having, is conversations, back and forth, right? It's not, there shouldn't be a wall there. So JR says, it seems like vets aren't trained well about nutrition. They're not. They get one course that lasts one semester in all of the training that they get. So the veterinarians that are out there that have done more research, I mean, I'm just so thankful for them, because they are the reason that we have so much more information than we had, say, 20, 30 years ago, right? So thankful for them. Thanks for being here, JR. Thank you for appreciating the information as well. I did tease you guys earlier about a bonus that my Patreon family is getting. In fact, I was in the middle of typing it up. I will be finishing it as soon as we end this video. It's about prescription diets that your veterinarian sells you, because that's still part of this, but kind of a whole other beast. So if your veterinarian is recommending a prescription diet, that's the bonus that you're going to get when you join the family on Patreon. So definitely check the link in the description below for a link to Patreon, or you can just go to Patreon and search the Pet Parenting Reset. You can join that way as well. I have 4 different tiers, so you can find the one that works best for you. And let's see, is it true that dog food companies support the veterinary schools? So pet food manufacturers do support the veterinary programs in the accredited veterinary programs in veterinary schools, yes. So they control what they learn. That's the consensus. And while I have not been to veterinary school, based on all of the blogs that I've read from the veterinarians who are actively out there teaching and writing blog posts about pet food and feeding fresh foods to your dogs, they are very transparent about the programs that they went through in their veterinary schooling. So I'm confident in answering that question with a yes. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. If you do have any comments or questions and you're just tuning in, make sure to go ahead and post. You can also, if you're watching a replay, go ahead and post in the comments section, and I will be more than happy to come back and answer your question. Join us on Patreon as well. The family on Patreon is amazing. And there's so much great information that I put up on Patreon that you're not going to get anywhere else, including the podcast, which, by the way, I haven't even mentioned the podcast so far today in the video. If you haven't already listened to the podcast or started following the podcast, go ahead and make today the day that you do that. You can find it on all the major podcast networks, Spotify, Apple, Google, et cetera, et cetera. The Pet Parenting Reset is all you got to do is search for that. You can also go to thepetparentingreset.com and you can find all of the past episodes there as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end today's video. Thank you so much for being here. And I hope this empowers you to feel more confident in speaking with your veterinarian. And yeah, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and end today's video. Thank you so much for being here. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I'll see you next time. Bye.